Researchers say heat-related deaths in the Middle East and North Africa will be 60 times higher by the end of the century if no climate action is taken. The London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine predicts that, in a worst-case scenario, about 123 people in every 100,000 will die, and that's far more than any other region in the world. Let's get more, should we? Here to give us her thoughts is Professor Elizabeth Robinson, who's the Director of the Grantham Research Institute at the London School of Economics. Hi, it's good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. How worried are you?
Pretty concerned, actually. I think this new report looking to Middle East and North Africa in particular is just showing how vulnerable we are to the impacts of climate change. And I think it's becoming clearer and clearer that climate change is one of the greatest threats to human health. And the impact of heat on our health is one particular example of that, but there's many others.
OK, where will people suffer most?
Well, certainly places that are already hot and that are going to get hotter. So this recent report looks at Middle East and North Africa. And so what they're projecting is, in the worst-case scenarios, we're going to see during summer, about half of summer days are going to be heatwave days. And so within those regions, we're going to be particularly concerned about much older people, younger people, and people with pre-existing conditions. But here in Europe, we've seen a lot of deaths from heat already. So in the 2003 heat waves, we saw about 15,000 deaths from heat alone in France. Adaptation works. Adaptation is really important. So by 2019, there were just 1,500 deaths in France from a worse heat wave. But there are limits to adaptation.
Why should the people in the UK be worried?
Because we've already seen deaths from heat here. So we need to be worried for several reasons. One, the impact here in the UK, and so we need to work hard on adaptation, reducing mitigation. But also we're a very interconnected world, so that impacts that happen in one part of the world are likely to affect us. And that's in part through populations overseas. We could think even of food security. A lot of our food comes from overseas, and that's going to be harmed by global warming.
Oh, my goodness me. How preventable is it?
It is preventable. You showed the data there that suggests we're already about 1.1 degrees or more above pre-industrial levels, which doesn't sound a lot, but already we're starting to see those impacts. So we're likely to see between 1.5 and 2 degrees of warming, but we can reduce warming through rapidly reducing our emissions. And part of that is a rapid transition to renewable energy. Part of that is changing the way we eat and travel. And so there are solutions, but we have to act fast. In the next sort of 7-8 years, we want to see global emissions halving. And so that's going to be hard, but doable.
How hot is it going to get? I remember being in Australia in the 1980s and being in an area in central Australia where I did a piece to camera and say, and it gets up to 42 degrees here. Oh, my goodness. It was 40 degrees in the UK last year.
It was, and I think quite a lot of us were quite surprised that we were already in 2022 getting temperatures of up to 40 in the UK. And what we hear in the Middle East and North Africa is temperatures up to 50 are going to be normalised by the end of the century. And
Can human beings cope with that?
So yes and no. So in part it depends on adaptation, but what we do know is above 35 degrees centigrade with sufficient humidities, our bodies simply can't cope. And so when it's that hot and that humid, we can't sweat, and so we can't keep our core temperature regulated.
Interesting.
And even coming up to those temperatures, we're putting tremendous pressure on our cardiovascular systems because our hearts have to pump harder to take the blood around our body to cool us down. And so if you're older, if you have a pre-existing heart condition, you're far more vulnerable to the impacts of heat.
Almost out of time. Top tips for dealing with this?
Individually,
if you're older,
access to cooling. Early warning systems are really important, making sure you have access to cooling. For example, governments can help by ensuring there's air conditioning, cooling in hospitals, in care homes. But really, access to cooling is important. Drinking lots of water, so rehydration is really important.
Okay. It's fascinating stuff. Thank you very much indeed, Professor. Thank you.